Hey y'all, Austin here. Welcome back to the Beats Motel. Please check in, sit down, relax, and as always, enjoy your stay. So we're going back into the multiverse, a deep dive into Stephen King's books. I uploaded a video a couple days ago on Carrie, deep dive into that. I'm going to continue that here now with his next publication book, which was Salem's Lot. We'll start off by saying that I really enjoyed Salem's Lot. I'll get a little bit more into it here at the end. I just want to start off by saying that. So, Salem's Lot was published in 1975. This was the follow up to Carrie, and honestly, it raised the bar for Stephen King for, I think, everybody. Essentially what this is this takes place in Salem's Lot, or Jerusalem's Lot, if you will. Salem's Lot is the short moniker for it, in Maine. Essentially what you have is you have your main character, Ben Mears, who returns to Salem Lot, where he spent about 4 or 5 years as a kid. He returns intending to write a book. In the book, as you go on, you end up finding out that he's writing about the Marston House, which the Marston House was home to Hugh B. Marston, I believe is what his name was. Essentially, you find out he was a mobster. He did a lot of bad stuff. He was an enforcer or something like that in New York, I believe, and ended up moving out there. And so you find out more and more about this house as the story goes along. So you have this one. The cast of heroes is quite big. You have Ben Mears. You have Mark Petrie. You have Father Callahan, who is the local Catholic priest there in Jerusalem's Lot. You have Susan, and you have Jimmy, as well as Matt. Susan is kind of the damsel in distress, I guess, and is the best way to put it. She's someone that Ben falls in love with. Like I said, Father Callahan is the local Catholic priest. Jimmy is the local doctor. He is really known around town. He grew up in that area. And then you have Matt, who is a local school teacher. So essentially what happens is vampires start invading. But it doesn't start off with like a bunch of vampires. What you have Stryker and Barlow, who end up moving in. They open up a local antique shop and they move into the Marston's house. They buy the Marston house, which Ben was intending to do. But they buy it, and as the story goes along, you find out that Barlow did know Hubie Marston before. They were like pen pals, if you will. I know when I was in elementary school, we had a pen pal kind of thing with the school that was an hour away, and I couldn't imagine finding out that my pen pal was a vampire back then. But essentially, what happens is, Barlow ends up. They find out Barlow is a vampire. Stryker is kind of his Igor, if you will, his helper. The town just slowly progresses into madness. Slowly, everybody becomes vampire. And that's just kind of the brief overview. Some things to note about this. This was kind of Stephen King's take on, if Dracula was to come to modern day America, like how would that work? He does mention Dracula quite a bit in this book, which I really enjoyed. I love Dracula. It's one of my favorite horror books of all time. One of my favorite horror movies. The one from the 90s with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder and Anthony Hopkins. I love that movie. Although I don't think Keanu Reeves was the best pick to play that character. You can't forget Gary Oldman. But again, essentially, this is King's take on, again, if Dracula was to take place in modern day America. In this book, you do get multiple points of views, which is really nice. He branches out, and Carrie, you got about 3 or 4. In this, you get quite a few. It's not overbearing, in all honesty, and he does flesh this town out very, very well. He does tell us little tidbits about the town. He talks about how years and years ago there was a huge fire, which has a significance to this book later on. He talks about how, Hubie Marston and his wife were very reclusive, only came to town like once a week, once every 2 weeks to get groceries and whatnot. And how, they ended up, no one seen them. They ended up going into the Marston house to try to see what was going on and make sure they were okay. And come to find out, Hubie Marston had killed his wife and then killed himself, and had actually set a booby trap up for people. And so this house just becomes a daunting character, if you will. It's kind of like the Psycho house in the movie Psycho, where you have it and it's ominous and it's looking over you, and the house becomes a character of itself. And that's how this one really is. The house is a character in this story. It kind of acts as like the gates to hell, if you will, because you see it and everybody's scared of it, and they even with nobody there, it still worries people. But again, like I said, kind of jumping around here, everybody does eventually get turned into vampires. You have our main cast of heroes, Callahan, Susan, Mark, Ben, Jimmy, and Matt, who try to fight back against, these vampires and whatnot. They try convincing other people, and as we would expect, it doesn't go very well. Now, again, as the story progresses, we obviously have the big climactic battle, climax, the good versus evil. And I will say, one thing I enjoyed about this is King kept it very realistic, because when you have a town, even though it's not that big, the surrounding area, everybody's been turned into vampires. And King, how he wrote it was great, because they realized, you know what, once they defeat Barlow, they're like, we got to get out of town. So they get out of town, they're gone, and that's how this book starts out. It's just a boy and a man. It's kind of like The Road, where that's just how he refers to them, the boy and the man. You don't know their names until you get deeper into the story, and then you realize, hey, it's Ben and it's Mark. But again, they leave, and as they come back, and they talk about how it's going to be hard, how it's not going to be something that just happens overnight, how it's not going to be something that this is going to take care of it. And they end up starting, that fire to kill or try to get rid of as many as they possibly can. And it just amazed me, because, he starts off with this town being so connected, the history of this town, all the different things, and it ends up coming back around and happens again. So it's kind of like foreshadowing what's going to happen. And that fire, because it's mentioned a few times, is significant, but you don't realize that that's going to be that significant. Then at least I didn't. Again, I really enjoyed Salem's Lot. This was my second read through of the book. My first read through, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a bit slow for my liking. This time around, I finished the book rather quickly, less than a week. I really, really enjoyed it. The multiple POVs, the multiple, just the way the town interacts with each other. I mean, you had the sheriff who, realizes that something's going on, and at the end, he's like, I'm done. I'm leaving. My deputy was supposed to be here. He's not. You all need to leave. I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. I'm going to my sister's. And then you have Father Callahan, who, in my opinion, got the worst out of everybody. I mean, there you could tell something's not right. And I know that he comes back and is a big deal in the Dark Tower later on in the series. To what degree, I don't know. I've tried not to find that out. I accidentally found that out. But knowing that, I'm looking forward to seeing Father Callahan whenever I get to that point where he does come back, because I did like his character. I mean, King wrote him as, he's a priest, but he has his own issues with how, everything is working out, and just where he's at. He wanted to write a book, and he's battling his faith, and he seems, in all honesty, to be the most, what's the best way to put it? He seems to be the most sympathetic character, in my opinion, because he wants to believe, and he's battling faith. Whereas you get Ben, and Ben, I mean, he had a wife who died and everything, and you see some remorse, but not to the degree like that you would want. Obviously, when Susan dies and they find him and all that, you feel remorse for Ben. You feel really bad for him. You feel sympathetic for his character. But I think Father Callahan, in all honesty, was the most fleshed out character in this book. And he wasn't in it as much as everybody else, but I think, in my opinion, he's the most fleshed out character. Would I definitely recommend this book? Yes, highly, highly recommend this book. I said before, hey, if you're going to start with Stephen King, start with Carrie. I would honestly say I would start with this first over Carrie. This is just like I said, there's multiple points of view. You jump around, but it's not anything that's not too crazy, too chaotic. You know, you see just the small town slice of life that's going on with these people and how it's flipped and turned upside down. I mean, you have infidelity in this book. You have abuse. You have murder. You have rape. You have all kinds of stuff, which is not a good thing. But that's just, unfortunately, that's how life is for some people. Bad things happen. And that's what King, I think, really comes across great in this book. It's just, this is a small town, and you would think nothing bad would happen in a small town. But this is what happens behind closed doors. And I'm not just talking about the vampire attacks. Like I said, there's infidelity, there's rape, there's beatings, there's abuse, there's all kinds of stuff. And again, I think King did that really well. Because again, I come from a small town myself, and you would think that would never happen. And that, unfortunately, a lot of times that's what happens in small towns. I think King really, really did great when he wrote this town. I think he really thought it out. You know, I know King came back years and years later after writing The Shining and wrote a follow up and wrote Doctor Sleep. I would love to see King write a follow up to this. I mean, obviously he has the short story and Night Shift and all that, but I would love a full fledged novel by King, just kind of following up with these characters. I'm not sure how he would do it, but I would love to see a follow up to this book. Like I said, I love this book. I would definitely put this in my top 5 Stephen King books that I've read thus far. I haven't read a whole lot, but I've read the big main ones. But again, I would highly put this in my top 5 easily. Again, I could just keep sitting here rambling on about this, but I'm not going to. Like I said, this is a great book. It's the perfect length. It's fleshed out very well. He shows you this town and just how everything is, and the thoughts, and it's such a great book. It's such a great book. Again, if you have not read it, pick it up. I promise you will love it. Again, I think this is one of King's best works right here, and it's only a second book, and I can only imagine it gets better from here. I haven't read some other ones. I know it does. But again, I would highly recommend this book. As always, thank y'all for watching the video. I do appreciate every single one of you that watches this, that stuck through to the end. Y'all have a good day.